Hello, welcome to That Can't Be Right, a podcast about exploring cultural wrongs, structural oddities. No, that's wrong. Structural wrongs, cultural oddities, and wild opinions. I made that up. We're doing great so far. If you're still listening, do whatever it takes to keep getting this podcast on your device. If you have ideas about new episodes, questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, you can send them to me at TCBRPod on Twitter and Instagram. And today, we're talking about video games. I love video games. I'm not good at video games. I play on the easiest setting possible. I quit if I die. I have to Google how to add friends on Switch and PlayStation every time I need to do it because I don't do it often, which could be commentary on how many friends I have and or my technology skills. But they're fun. They can be expensive. But they're also a really good medium for storytelling. So what the can't be right is today is still up for debate. But my guest will have some opinions that I think will be useful. Guest today is Heather Ann Campbell. Heather is a writer, comedian, improv performer, and co-host of How Did This Get Played, an excellent gaming podcast. Heather, welcome to That Can't Be Right.
Hey, hi. Hello. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm okay. You heard me mess up the tagline that I made up for my podcast right off the back. So things are going great.
I think it works, though, because, that can't be right. Applies when you have just messed up the intro. You'll be like, oh, that can't be right.
Yep. I'm doing great.
So-
I'm living the brand. I'm living the brand. I'm adding a new segment that I didn't tell you about when I gave you the outline.
Okay, great.
It is something that can't be right in your life. What is something you've seen, read, heard, thought about, got mad at an appliance about that you think can't be right?
I mean, can I go big with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I see that we have a vaccine, and yet the numbers on coronavirus are going up. That can't be right.
Yes, that cannot be right. That's crazy how that happened and how you have restaurants and pastors and places saying, no, if you wear a mask here, you can't come in. If you're vaccinated, you can't come in. And it's like all of you people that are saying that have the smallpox scar on your arm. So
It's
what
so
vaccines?
strange.
Yeah. Are there any anti-vaxxers in your life?
No. Even so, full disclosure, my dad is a Trump supporter, which I sometimes talk about on How Did This Get Played? But he's also really super into science. So if you can imagine the collision of those two worlds.
Yeah.
So he as soon as the pandemic started, he was like, this guy's got to change his messaging. Like he can't. Why? This is not. You can't joke around about this stuff. And I'm like, yeah. Well, maybe you should apply those thoughts to the rest of his character on the whole.
Yeah.
But he's Fox News brainwashed, and it's awful. But they got the vaccine immediately. They wore masks the whole time. They bleached their hands. Like it's such a weird contradiction. But, any investigation of any point of view about it, he immediately hits a wall. Like it's like, well, he's racist, Dad. Like he's racist. And he's like, that's not what this is about. It's about the national parks. And I'm like, he's trying to destroy the national parks. Well, that's not right. That can't be right. That's my dad.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see. We can ask if he wants to do an episode.
I mean,
no, we have, there are some anti-vaxxers in my circle, and it's like every time they send something, they'll send a news article, and it's like, they didn't test the vaccine on pregnant women. I was like, of the people in this room, I am the only one that could conceivably have a child. You're a man, so it's not really a concern for you. You're old, so it's also, I don't know if you're interested in raising children at this point. People breakthrough cases, and it's like, you still got a better shot of winning the lottery. So what are you really talking about? But
yeah, the vaccine is like, somebody's like, hey, there's a chance you're going to, I mean, this is backwards thinking. And I actually think this would be bad messaging. But the vaccine, if you want to win the lottery, the vaccine's like buying 1 million tickets. And the unvaccinated is like buying 1 ticket. It's like, well, what are your chances of winning the lottery? Except it's in reverse, because the lottery for the unvaccinated is death. And see, the messaging doesn't work there, but you get the idea.
Yeah, it's not the worst messaging I've heard on either side of the vaccinated or unvaccinated aisle. But we're not epidemiologists, so let's talk about video games.
Heck yes.
Because, like I said, I like video games. I grew up playing with my brothers. Now, when I can't beat a level, I quit. In the past, I would hand the controller to my brother to beat the boss or whatever. How did you get into video games? What was your introduction?
So, I mean, when I was growing up, I got a quarter allowance every week. 1 quarter. No, wait, I got $1. I got $1. And that was my allowance. It was like, you can spend this dollar or you can save it, because they were trying to teach me how to save. You know, like at the end of the 2 months, you'll have $10 almost, and et cetera. Which also makes it sound like I was like born in the 1920s, because like $1. But that was, I mean, it was just like, here's $1, it's yours. But instead of teaching me to save, I was like, wait, $1 is 4 quarters. And we would always have lunch on the weekends at this pizza parlor near we had an empty piece of land that we had a tent. That also makes me sound like from the 1920s. So we had this piece of land in Wisconsin, and we camped there and went into town and went to the pizza place on Saturdays, I think. And they had a Donkey Kong machine. And so I would split my dollar into 4 quarters to play Donkey Kong. And that was it. I mean, like, all you have to, especially when, because, you know, I was born before iPads. So
Can't
like,
imagine.
if you see a screen as a kid that you can move stuff on, it is magical. It's the most incredible thing in the world. Now it's commonplace. But at that time, there was, you either watched a screen happen, or once in a while you got to move stuff around on the screen. And I was massively addicted from that point forward. Like, I would go to the 7-Eleven near my house and stand on a milk crate and play Street Fighter. My parents were like, hey, you know, if you get straight A's, you'll get a better Christmas present. And I was like, okay, I can bank this. So I would get like straight A's and then be like, can I please have a Sega? And that was, I mean, like, I'm crippled by this. It's my whole life. I eventually became a video games journalist for a while. And then now I have a video game podcast, and I'll never stop, which is also cool. Like, I know there are old people who play video games, but they weren't like, I'm very fortunate in that the games became more and more complicated and had more complicated metaphors to express as I became older. So by the time I'm in college, games were expressing stuff that was collegiate, you know, like it wasn't just move Pac-Man around. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I've grown up with games. And, you know, when I became the age to be a parent, not that I am a parent, I'm a eternal child idiot. But when I became the age to become a parent, if I wanted, the games became about parents. Like, the protagonist of The Last of Us is a dad because the people making the games were dads. Like, it's really, yeah, I don't even remember the question. I'm just talking about games now. So,
which is perfect, which is the point. And you've like hit all the points I want to go through in the conversation. So you've survived all of the decades between $1 allowances and camping in tents in the great Wisconsin mountains. I don't know. Are there mountains in Wisconsin? Anyway. We don't, I mean, You can answer.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think
Okay.
there's hills. There's like dells.
Okay. If I'm wrong, please correct me on Twitter. It's fine. You talked about growing up with games, which I think is a really interesting position to be in because, like you're saying, there are people. I have like younger nieces, nephews, cousins that have multiple consoles in their home, multiple TVs in their home. So it's not like, man, I want to play video games, but someone's watching TV. No, I'm just going to take the phone. I'm going to take the Switch. I'm going to go in a different room and just like escape. For you, as someone who's touched video games at different places, as a journalist, as a podcast host, as a gamer yourself, what has it been like watching like the life cycle development of video games as something that's kind of like your parents are like, you want what for Christmas? To, I think you've mentioned like your mom plays video games now. So like, what has that journey been like?
Yeah, my mom is a big gamer now.
Love that.
She'd always dabbled in video games. Like I think when she was a kid, like Pong was out, and she's talked about like playing Pong. And when the pandemic hit, I got her a Switch because she was like, "What's Animal Crossing? What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, you'll love it," because she really likes management of stuff. Like she's until recently was like the manager of a public school cafeteria. So like she loves, oh, we need 5 of this and 8 of, I mean, she didn't love it, but she's very good at it.
Yeah.
And I think it gives her like a dopamine feedback loop. So she was addicted to that game. And then I gave her Stardew Valley, which is a little bit more management of stuff.
Yep.
And she was like in the end game of that game so fast. Like she flew through it. And then I was like, okay, and then I talked about Fantasian on my podcast, which is this RPG for Apple TV and the iPhone. And my mom is on my family plan. So she was like, can I play this? And I was like, sure. And I sent her a controller because she didn't know how to she's a gamer, but you have to open the door for her.
Yeah.
And she is now in like the late game on that, and watching her learn the vocabulary of role-playing games specifically about like the stuff that we take for granted, that like water spells will beat fire spells, and like all of those like common sense video game tropes that she has to discover, unpack, and then sometimes be like, why when I can't cast spells is there an ellipses over my head? But it's like, oh, you can't speak. Oh, she's like, oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
So again, I've lost track of the question, but watching her go through video games has been kind of like watching me in go through video games. It's like fast forwarding through all of the stages of gaming as she goes from like, I think her first game was like some iPad touch based like Candy Crush. That's that kind of game, which is basically just Tetris or Puzzle Bobble. And now she's in like a full blown RPG. And that's kind of been my journey also. I guess what's frustrating is that I know that a lot of games are hitting these more mature themes. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is a difficult game. Like it's not like, oh, this is awesome when I kill people. It's trying very hard to make you feel kind of bad. And I think the place where it accomplishes it the best is when you kill a dog that's attacking you, and then you see that dog being somebody's buddy. Like you're like, oh, okay, this is the full texture of this game. But it's still accomplishing those goals through like puzzle tropes and like video game tropes that we are all familiar with.
Yep.
And I'm waiting for. And I know that there are plenty of postmodern games, you know, games that break the fourth wall, games that have like elevated language, like elevated script language. But I feel like there is another stage of gaming that needs to happen. And I don't know what that is, but I'm hungry for that. I'm hungry for something where that really truly that fires all the portions of your brain and activates you in the same way that a novel does, in the same way that a great movie does, in the same way that an experimental album does. And the best of those things aren't necessarily reliant on the things that have come before. They are expansions on that stuff. So yeah, I feel like we're at a wall. And I know there are indie developers out there who are like attempting those things, who are like really pushing and pushing and pushing. But there's still like a gaminess to that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So first, going back to your mom, I'm so jealous because I tried to play Overcooked with my mother and immediately wanted to be put up for adoption. It was not great. I think we got one dish out. If you're not familiar with Overcooked, it's like a couch co-op game where you're just running a kitchen with your friends, and it can ruin relationships, but it's so fun. My mom was terrible. I was like, no, you got to chop. You got to. She's like, how do I do that? I was like, you move it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And The Last of Us, talking about The Last of Us, loved that game. That was not a game I quit because I was bad. I quit because I was scared. So when I started The Last of Us, I restarted it last June or July to prepare for the release of The Last of Us 2. Only played during the day. I played with the lights on. I played with the door open. So there wasn't like my mom coming to say hi to me and me getting scared that someone was coming to kill me. But it's such a great story. There's so many like emotions you feel when you're playing the game, which we'll talk about in a second. But the last thing I want to ask, or the thing I want to ask you about, is like this next stage of gaming. And you kind of mentioned it, like there are indie gamers who are doing it. Do you think that like game studios are similar to movie studios, or too reliant on existing IP?
I think everybody, the larger the financial risk, the more terrified everybody is. And in every avenue of life, the more powerful you are, the less likely you are to be smart or creative. You're just really good at being a powerful person. Like you're the person who comes in the room and says, do this, do that. I know how to do this. And that, I think, my theory is that it requires a slightly lower level of intelligence, because if you are truly knowledgeable about anything, you're like, okay, there's like 300 ways we can do this. Like the reason the president isn't a scientist is because a scientist is paralyzed by possibilities. And the president needs to be a dude who just goes, yeah, yes, this, yeah. Yeah, that one.
Just bleach your body. It'll all work out. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, I mean, I think there's bandwidth. Anyway, so like without, I mean, there are great executives out there and there are great publishers out there, but when you are beholden to shareholders and beholden to hundreds of millions of dollars, which is now always at stake for AAA gaming, it's because they have to build a whole fucking world. Like you can't just like a AAA game can't be Mario. I mean, Mario is a AAA game, but Super Mario Brothers would not be a AAA game anymore.
Right.
Instead, it's got to be like Mario has a million different outfits and every blade of grass that he interacts with moves. And it's like, does Mario need that stuff? Anyway, so I think they are shackled by existing IP. And in the rare case where they take a big risk with a new IP, for example, you know, when Mirror's Edge came out, it was like, okay, here's a AAA game about a new world and a new protagonist and a new thing. And it did not saturate the market the way it needed to in order to become a long-running legacy of games. Cyberpunk, which is based on an existing like tabletop game, was like, even that was like, okay, here's a new world. And it was a catastrophe of mismanagement internally. And also like on release, it was like laughably ridiculous.
Can you explain a little bit more about what went wrong with Cyberpunk for people who might not know? And we only have a little bit of time, so
okay. I'm going to speak with authority on a topic that I know nothing about. Just as a heads up. So if you're like listening to this and you want to get on Twitter and be like, that's not what happened, I'm telling you, this is not what happened. But what happened was the people in charge of that game overpromised. They produced packaged playthroughs that were far more complicated and far more dense than the technology would allow for many more years. They said that it was going to happen now. Then they told their teams, try this stuff. And their teams were like, you can't have 300 individually AI controlled characters with their own life cycles on screen at the same time. You can't do that. You cannot. Like, I think at one point in the Cyberpunk pre-release hyping, they said that you could follow each person in the city through their day and they would be doing stuff. And it's like, that's impossible. Like, nobody's can do that yet. Like, you can have like procedurally generated garbage in Grand Theft Auto where it's like a guy's like walking down the street with a cup of coffee, but he's not going to go to work and then he's not going to go to an apartment. Like, he's just going to be walking with his coffee and you'll be like, oh, that's a coffee guy.
Yep.
And then when it came time for, hey, we need money in this company. We need money now. They forced their developers and their programmers into a crunch of release that was impossible. So nothing that they delivered on day one was going to match what they'd promised. And because of the mismanagement, the product that they did deliver was bad. Like, so I'm a huge sci-fi nerd and I love like future noir stuff and I love cyberpunk as a genre. Like real cyberpunk, like the William Gibson books and stuff were like very progressive. Like they were talking about gender identity and like the fluidity of person in the 80s. And cyberpunk does not deliver on even that. Like, it's not like now you talk to a kid and all kids are cyberpunks in theory. Like, they're like, yeah, I don't give who cares who you like or what you call nobody, do whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, this game was still sort of, I don't know, anchored in the like traditional. It's ridiculous that in 2077, anybody would have, like, you would go into a store and become anything. Yeah. Like the idea that anyway. So that's, I think, what went wrong with Cyberpunk, which I'm wrong about. So you cannot say on Twitter that I was wrong. I'm wrong about what I said.
I mean, it's a podcast, and that's, I think, the whole point of the podcasting industry, to have an opinion and be very firmly wrong about it.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But no, I didn't play Cyberpunk just because I haven't like investigated playing Cyberpunk because I heard so much about everything that went wrong at launch. And it doesn't.
I platinumed it. I platinumed that game.
So did you follow the guy from the coffee shop to work to home?
No, they don't do anything. No. Nobody does anything.
sounds like my day. So it would work.
Instead, I drove a car, and then all of a sudden, cars would fall from the sky, and I was like, "That's not supposed to be happening."
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so like that developer. Are they going to be okay? This is just like, I don't even know if you would have the answer to this question, but like, is that something that would like ruin their life, the company's livelihood?
So the company is also responsible for The Witcher, which also has a successful Netflix show.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an existing IP that as long as they make another Witcher game that doesn't suck or isn't produced in a panic, I think they'll be fine.
Okay.
But also there are exceptions to a flawed launch. Final Fantasy 14, the most recent online Final Fantasy game, had a catastrophic launch. Like, it was broken in every way. And the company released a massive apology, relaunched the game in-game with in-game events. So, like, they wiped out the world with a meteor that happened in-game and then relaunched the game in a new way. And now it has more active players than World of Warcraft, which has been the juggernaut for forever.
Yeah.
And that is almost a legendary success story of turning around a ship after it's hit an iceberg, bringing it back to port, patching the hole, and then setting it off on a wonderful cruise.
I like that metaphor a lot, and
Yeah.
I'll have to do some more research. I'm not great at RPGs. Like, I feel like I keep talking about quitting a lot, but I gave up on The Witcher 3.
So did I.
Yeah. And then, but maybe I'll check out Final Fantasy. One more question about, like, kind of the mechanics of gameplay and your experience playing games. What are your thoughts on the freemium model? I see the value in, like, getting a bunch of people onto a game and then charging them for it, but I hate it because I did not play a ton at arcades, but I am of the age where it's like, you got a game and that was it. Like, you played that game. You didn't have to buy skins. You didn't have to buy loot boxes. It was just like, you play the game. You also don't have to update it every time you turn the game on. So what are your thoughts on the freemium world?
Well, I guess my relationship with the freemium model is complicated. You know, I'm looking over at a shelf of games that are full and complete. They're my Super Nintendo shelves. And each of those games, that's the whole game. And I don't have to worry that I didn't download Chrono Trigger DLC, or that if I put in Chrono Trigger now, that it would be impossible to play. Like, a lot of these freemium games are also dependent on infrastructure and logistics in order to be playable. And that gives me kind of it sets me up for grief that I don't want to experience in the future. I've had Genshin Impact downloaded on my PlayStation since it was released, and I have never opened it because I'm like, what if I really love this? And then I spend money on it. And I'll always, on those kinds of games, I'll think, okay, I would have spent $49.99 on this game. So that is my cap for spending money on the game in the game. I bought one mount in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I justified by being like, it's a wolf. How can I not ride around on a wolf? I mean, that makes the game better. But the only freemium game that I've played was Final Fantasy Record Keeper, which is like a mobile game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, $49.99. I would have spent that much money to get here. I did not. I went beyond that. And that is why my relationship with the freemium games are complicated and scary, because I was like, oh man, they released his other sword.
Gotta have it.
And it does more damage. And okay, I'll and also with that game, and I think with Genshin Impact, it's not just that you're buying the sword, you're buying an opportunity to roll for the sword. Like, it's like a gachapon or whatever, like the thing where you put in money and you twist a little knob, a little ball comes out and you open it, and you're hoping it's the sticky hand.
Thing. Yeah. And then you get the Chinese finger trap or something like that.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man,
need another quarter.
With the sticky hand.
Yeah. So I have not spent a ton of money on any freemium games. I've tried like a couple mobile games, but I had a friend who was like, oh no, Ryan, I spent $20-$30 for several months in a row on some kind of puzzle game trying to unlock so you can play more or whatever. So I'm like, I do not like the model. But again, it's working for them. So I guess it's...
What if okay, I'm going to solve the problem.
Yes.
What if there was, and I know that this is not going to be something that the developers would like, but maybe it would encourage more people to play these freemium games. What if there was a cap? What if you hit $200? If you've spent $200 in the game, you unlock everything. And it's like almost like legendary editions of actual games where it's like you can buy the base version, you can buy the extended online edition with all the DLC unlocked, or you can buy the legendary edition, which gives you all the extra weapons and probably a little fucking statue and like a hat or something. Like, yeah. I feel like there should be like, hey, the game is free to play. You can or cannot spend money in it. If you decide to spend money on it and you get to $200, you have unlocked the legendary edition of this game, and everything from that point forward is unlocked for you. I can't imagine that would work because these developers are looking for I would play Record Keeper and you would see high rollers in that game. And it was like, okay, there's no way you've spent. Same with SimCity on the iPad was a freemium game where you paid money to unlock buildings. Mm-hmm. And you would tour these other cities and you'd be like, there's no way you did this without spending a minimum of $10,000 on the game.
Yeah.
Like some billionaire with, like a German name. So I'm like, okay, either you're actually German and you're like a literal German billionaire, or but it would be like there's like you could look at them and see the amount of money spent, and it was staggering.
On the flip side, I think that's one thing I liked, but also was depressed about when playing Animal Crossing, because people would have amazing islands, and I would look and I would be like, "There's actually no way we're playing the same game." I have a cute bike. I have a cute soccer field. You have a whole, you've set up a mini Tokyo on your island. And it was $60 and then like thousands of hours doing that. But it's like the same. We have the same experience. We have the same opportunity to do that. You've just gone way above and beyond anything I could possibly imagine.
You meet so it's like somebody who's extremely good at fingerboarding. Like you're like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to judge anybody. Be good at whatever you want. Like, make your Animal Crossing island into a 1-to-1 recreation of Paris. That's fine. Yes. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm going to keep moving, but I might ask this question at the end.
Well, let me just say that I played Animal Crossing from March 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Every single day. I was locked into that game, and I was like, every day I got to talk to my dudes, dig up my stuff, visit the store.
Got to check turnip prices.
Every day, look for the art guy. I made millions and millions and millions of bells, like could purchase anything. And then it became like it felt like an obligation. Like I wasn't logging in to play. I was logging in because if I didn't, then X would happen. Like I'd miss something. And so on December 31st, I was like, I'm not going to play this at all in 2021. And that was when I stopped. But kudos to the people who are still playing Animal Crossing. I hear they still are releasing stuff.
Yeah. My niece likes to play, so she'll call me to play, and my island is a mess. If you don't play for a long time, you walk out of your home and your hair is just like a nest of mess.
Is that true?
You have to clean your hair. You might have cockroaches in your home.
Wow.
There will be, So, I mean, if you're going to
wait. And
your
people move away, right?
I don't think anyone's moved away, but my hair was a mess on my island. Bugs. There's like kind of lots of weeds and stuff all over your island, of course.
Wow.
And I was still wearing like a Happy New Year's outfit because I don't think I had played since December 31st either.
That's kind of charming in a way. Like it makes, I wish that the houses got overgrown also, like Last of Us style, like just like ivy all over everything.
Yeah.
Like maybe everyone looks haunted. Like,
Where
like
have you been?
Meet the owl and he's like, I've been alone for 8 months.
Yeah. I've just been talking to the skeletons. And the bugs. I'm talking to the bugs now. I'm not scared of them anymore. Yeah. So I go and because my niece likes to play, so I turn it on occasionally. But again, Animal Crossing, that was a fun moment in time last year. I remember explaining to my mom that I had to go back upstairs and check on the turnip prices. And she's like, maybe you should spend more time downstairs with us.
Oh man, I had the opposite experience where I was on a subreddit or a Slack channel. I don't even remember. Maybe it was a Discord where like everybody was sharing turnip prices. And then I told my mom they're $4.50 on this island and like had to walk my mother through how to use airplane codes and like what you do and don't do on somebody else's island. Like there's etiquette to this. And then like, I think she FaceTimed me to show me her Switch so that she knew she wasn't doing anything wrong, and then like went and exchanged and made all the money in the world. Yeah, she was the opposite. She would be like, I'm addicted, and then she'd laugh for 30 seconds and you'd be like, oh no.
Maybe you should put down the Switch and head to the pizza parlor. I don't know. Yeah, Animal Crossing. That was a good moment. That was a fun moment because I had purchased my Switch a few weeks before the world shut down, thinking, oh, if I can't go on spring break because of coronavirus, I'll just play Switch all week.
Yeah.
And that'll be fun. And here we are.
The truth is, that's great timing to buy a Switch because they became unavailable for so many months afterwards.
It was. And because I like put it on Instagram, hey, play with me, be my friend on Switch. My friend's like, oh, where'd you get it? I was like, oh, I bought this 2 weeks ago. Just in case my spring break trip got canceled. And sorry, good luck, friend.
That's like, so last August, a year ago, oh my God.
Wow.
A year ago, I bought it's called like Active Shield. And it is an Iron Man style clear helmet with filtered air that comes out of the bottom in these cartridges that you can replace every month. And they were like, oh, we're going to release in March of next year. And I was like, yeah, I'll still probably be using it. And then January came and the vaccine came out. And I was like, oh man, I spent all the money on the Iron Man helmets and they're not going to be here. And the whole thing's going to be over. And now in August, things are resurging. They had all these shipping delays because of like
supply chains and stuff.
Because of that boat that got stuck.
Oh yeah.
And so they like all of it. And so they're coming out at the end of this month. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to wear that helmet around in the grocery store. This is going to be great.
And then you'll still need it because I'm sure there are more variants. I was telling someone the other day, I have never used the word variant before Loki started. And now I can't stop saying it. So thank you, Loki. Thank you, coronavirus. That's going to be a word of the year for sure.
I'm going to say something that you can edit out of the podcast because it's pretty grim if you want. But there was like a article that was from the CDC 2 days ago and also like a UK scientist. And it was for sure we are 2 mutations away from all of the vaccines not working. And I was like, okay, man, if it's like 2024 and we're still doing this, I will be unrecognizable to myself. But also PSVR will have come out by then, the new one. And so maybe I'll just be online forever. Like I'll just be in the helmet.
Yeah. I mean, this is a world of our own making. And maybe I'll use that time to get better at video games. Probably not. Probably still going to be 15 minutes. I'm done. I can't anymore. But I'm glad. Well, I'm not glad, but you get to use your Iron Man helmet, and that is, you're getting your money's worth, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it look like it's shaped the same, like that narrow cheekbone that the Iron Man helmet. I mean, it's clearly just an Iron Man helmet, but clear with cartridges.
I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to wear it. I'll look like a superhero.
Do you wear glasses
in hell?
Yeah. I mean, do you wear glasses? Will fogging be an issue for you?
In their video, their promo video, which who knows? The whole thing could be a grift. I still don't have this helmet. I paid for it in the year 2020.
Oh, Lord.
But they update. They're constantly sending you updates like, oh, hey, we just got the microchips for the oxygen pods or whatever. So good news. Shipping is now on for the end of the month. And then at the end of that month, they're like, turns out that the rubber for the elastic strap is backed up. Like, there's so much. Everything is locked into a bottleneck. What was I don't even remember but in the videos, they show people wearing glasses. And it's supposed to be like, oh, I can wear glasses. But they also sell ones. I'm not a shill for this company. I know that I don't even think I've said their name.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to sponsor, guys, you can send me my email.
They also have one that is tinted, so it's sunglasses. Like the helmet is tinted like Daft Punk or something. That's not the one I got. I got a regular clear. Yeah.
I truly can't wait to see it. Back to video games. We got on a sidebar, and I don't know how we got there. I can't wait to listen to see where we just completely went off the rails. We've talked about this a little bit. Video games as stories. I realize in the last, since we've been home, since I got the Switch, since I've been unemployed for most of this year, video games are really good mediums for storytelling. You mentioned The Last of Us, the fact that he's a dad. There's lots of grief there that he experiences, the main character. There's a couple other games I've played where I'm like, oh, I'm sad, and I did not expect to be this sad playing a video game. But I think they hit the right notes. As a writer yourself, how do you think video games are, how do you think they've gotten so good at telling these stories? Like, are they bringing in writers, or you mentioned like their parents now, so they have that perspective. What do you think it is about video games like that they've gotten so good at telling stories?
They're definitely hiring professional writers. And some of these companies are even unionized, like Horizon Zero Dawn won a BAFTA for the writing. Like they are legitimately, at least on that. I mean, the programming and development side is not unionized at any of these places, as far as I know. But on the writing side, like if you want to hire somebody who worked on Westworld, which the writer of The Last of Us Part 2 was, then you have to offer them comparable contracts and benefits. Like, you're not going to get these people who have dedicated their lives to and honed their craft unless you can provide them with union style contracts or legitimately union contracts. I think the WGA now has a video game writing award. So I think that's a lot of where it's coming from. They're bringing in people from the mediums of television and film, and they are I think that presents a different set of problems, because your modes of storytelling in games are going to be environmental or narrative. And the environmental storytelling only works if you are playing a character who's investigating a space where they're alone or with somebody else. But you can't just rummage through somebody's stuff unless there is a reason for your character to be doing that. They're solving a problem, or they are like in an abandoned house, and it's like, what happened to these people? So when I go into somebody's house, actually, I don't go up to their bookshelf and take down the books and look at private notes from their dad. But if you're in a game, that's an acceptable behavior, which also creates this barrier between your understanding of how life actually works and the understanding of the tropes of video gaming. Like, you know, when my mom's playing Fantasian and she's exposed to these things for the first time, she's like, is it okay if I just go through this guy's stuff? And I'm like, yes, no, you can take, if there's a treasure chest in somebody's house, you just rob them. Like you don't do, there's no punishment. It's supposed to be discovered. Mm-hmm. And then you have this, the dialogue is elevated because the writers are professional. But I think that you get a greater reliance on cutscenes because that is the mode of storytelling that we have adopted from television and film, or even theater. But I do think that I think there are interactive theater events that are happening. I mean, pre-coronavirus, there were these like experimental theater experiences where you were part of a story and affected a story and shaped the environment of the story. And I do wish that there were more playwrights being scalped and dropped into the video game world, because I think that theater has more to give to games than television does. Because theater is interactive naturally. Like if you make eye contact with somebody in the audience during a show, you have affected the story and their experience. Whereas when Sam Porter Bridges makes eye contact in Death Stranding, it is a joke on the experience of playing a video game, which is different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. I as I said earlier, I'm frustrated. I feel like there's something that's about to happen, and I'm getting impatient for whatever that is.
Waiting for it. No.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. First, like with cutscenes. So I bought my PlayStation 4 very late in the life cycle of the PlayStation 4 because I wanted to play Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm very simple. So your mom asking like, can I do this? And then my experience playing Grand Theft Auto is like, if I do this, how many cops are going to show up? Very interesting. Mm-hmm. But one of the first games I played was Uncharted 4, which looks amazing. My mom walked into the room and was like, oh, is that a video game? What are you watching? I was like, no, it's a video game. I didn't necessarily enjoy my experience playing Uncharted 4 because it was all like very inevitable. Like I'm just doing this to get to a cutscene. Yeah. And that wasn't super fun for me. Yeah. But I like your point about like bringing playwrights to the room because the way they write is different and the experiences they have, and like adding that experience for the player could be pretty fun.
Here, so the reason, and I talk about Hideo Kojima on my podcast a lot. And the reason that he is currently my favorite developer, which also I know is a little hack. It's like being like, oh, I love the movies of Steven Spielberg. Have you heard of him? Like, it's not, I'm not like reaching into the depths of programming, but the stuff that he tries and attempts in order to incorporate the physical presence of the player into the experience of playing the game. Whether it be that he was trying to get one of the things that got scrapped on one of his earliest games, Snatcher, was that he wanted to coat the discs with the smell of blood so that when the discs heated up in your computer while you were investigating this murder, they would release the smell of decay into your physical space. And people were like, you can't do that. but the fact that he was investigating that was interesting. Like famously, in one of his games, you have to take the controller out of one of the controller ports because the person you're fighting can read your movements. He's a psychic, and you have to plug it into a different controller port. So the presence of the player is understood by the game. Like, or like one of his games is just about fighting vampires, I think. I haven't played this one, but it has a solar panel on the back of the game, and it's a Game Boy game. And in order to fight the vampires, you have to go outside and put it in the sun. And I think that like there's like that. I know those are all gimmicky, but they are beginning to go down a path of like, what is the sort of corporeal experience of a player as opposed to just being eyeballs looking at a thing? Mm-hmm. Like, what are the ways in which you can incorporate the fact that this story can only be told if the human does a thing, right? There's something right there, man. I know somebody smart's going to do the thing.
Yeah.
I also think that there was, there's mics in some of these controllers and stuff now. I think a lot about, so in the Neverending Story, the movie, mm-hmm. the guy can't save the world unless he goes to the window and screams his girl's name, right?
Right.
And I know there are games where you, like Phoenix Wright, where you shout at the machine, like objection. Yeah. But I think that like a game where, and maybe it probably exists, a game where you can only beat the final boss by telling them that you love them, like to create a vulnerability in the player, or like all of the, I don't know. There just seems like somebody should give me a $7 million to think about this. Like an overall deal at a studio for video games, where I just come in every day and I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to release a thing that goes on each of your fingers. And if you get nervous, your character, you can't move your character anymore because he's scared.
Well, I mean, the Switch, you played Ring Fit, right? Ring Fit Adventure?
Yeah.
It has a heart rate thing. They could do something where like you can't do something, interact, you can't move, you can't take like a shot or do something if your heart rate is above whatever. Like
what? Yeah, like why not make a Resident Evil game full of jump scares where if your heart rate rises, it's your aiming reticule shakes all over the screen. So you as a player have to constantly be trying to calm yourself down. And just the idea that you're trying to calm yourself down is going to make your heart race. Like, put that in the game. Ruin that game for everybody.
I wouldn't be able to turn that game on. I'm a very scary person. I would probably just like try to use my dog's pulse or something. Like he sleeps.
Your dog's pulse should be higher than yours. As a heads up.
Dang it.
But you could like put it on like a sleeping grandma.
Like whoever's sleeping next to you on the couch.
Yeah, I mean, and people be like, this person's a psychopath. Their heart rate never changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely things like that. But you mentioned the $7 million deal. Yeah. Hopefully someone listening to this can make that happen.
Uh-huh.
Extra experiences aside, like what would you want your game to look like?
Oh, geez. I mean, so the first, and this is just literally off the top of my head. You know how photorealistic PT looks? I don't know if you've seen that game or heard of it. It takes place inside of a hallway, and that's all it is. So the visuals of the game itself look photorealistic, like and the game is, I think, from the PS3. So it's so whatever they could pull off on the PS5 would be that much more exceptional. So I think the game that I would want to make, 75% of the game would take place in a brightly colored Mario-esque world where you're like a goofy idiot like Ratchet and Clank just blasting your way through a thing, and like maybe there's a subplot about like, oh, there's like cracks in the world, or like there's, I don't know what the fuck, like stuff where the game's breaking, you know, like the game's breaking, and you would enter through some portal at the end of what would effectively be the second act of the game, and it would look photorealistic, like our world. And your little dude would have to, like, his experience of the, like, all of his, like, if it's Mario, you can't run down the street throwing your hat because people will start screaming, and then the government will show up, and like almost like an ET experience where the first 3/4 of the game are just like, what would ET the video game be like? And then suddenly you're in the real world and it's like, oh shit, all I need to do is get back to the game part. Yeah. And it would be like a sneaking, like jump scare horror experience of like Ratchet trying to find a door back into the game where people are shooting him. And also like maybe there's permadeath. So like if you break through a window and like the cops come and they shoot Ratchet, the game ends there. Like it's like suddenly an extremely tense, photorealistic experience.
I would play. I mean, again, I'm scary. So the pressure would be a lot for me, but I would try it. The concept sounds great. One last question on...
Okay.
Well, not like last question, but one last question on like kind of storytelling in gaming, and then 2 more questions.
Okay.
What game would you have someone play if you just wanted them to like completely fall in love with gaming and the possibility of gaming? Like you kind of had your mom doing Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley and Fantasia you mentioned. Is there any other game, any other genre that you would introduce someone to?
I think it's a lot of that is player dependent. I think that, you know, my mom's gateway into gaming was to sort of weaponize her love of sorting stuff into like all this room has all of my t-shirts. Like she loves that, or did. Now she's like, I love maximizing my spell percentages on the, you know, it's the same. So like knowing that my mom is almost like an obsessive detail person, that was her entryway. I think that if, you know, if I was trying to get a comedian to like games, I'd have them play Portal because it's the only funny game ever made. And also expands and expands and expands in such an organic way that you, I think, demonstrate both simple rules, like you point there and press B, point there and press B, and that's it. That's the whole game. Is then how do you solve these physical spaces by pointing and pressing B? And I think until you're later in the game, there's very little that's like reflex dependent. Usually it's like puzzle solving dependent. So if it was a comedian, I'd give them Portal. But like, you know, if I knew a historian, maybe I'd give them Red Dead Redemption 3 or whatever the most recent one is, where you're like walking around in the Old West and like every saloon, like every general store has a book that you have to in part because that would be enjoyable as a holodeck experience for that person, but also they'd be like, that's not that can't be right. that they wouldn't have pickles in this area of Texas because, like, maybe that would be, or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe a historian would hate that game.
But like you have reasoning behind it, which I think is way more than I expected in the answer. And that's on me. That's not you. But like, yeah, it's like, hey, you like history? Check out this historical game set in the 1800s, right? No, that makes sense.
I think the easiest person to get into gaming who wasn't would be somebody who likes cars, because you would just give them Grand Theft Auto and you'd probably give them like a steering wheel and pedal setup, or not Grand Theft Auto, Gran Turismo.
Okay.
And no, not you like cars? Kill everyone.
Yes.
No, like you'd give them Gran Turismo and you'd be like, you gonna have any car in history. And they are all pretty respectful of the original mechanics of the car, and they have the engine sounds. And I feel like it would be like a UFO catcher or a skill crane. You could just pick up a person and drop them into video games and they'd be like, this is great. And also, I think I read an article once about people who were exceptionally good at Gran Turismo being recruited by driving teams because the tracks were so accurate that they could put these people in regular race cars and they would have already memorized the layout of a race and perform pretty well. I swear I remember reading that.
I believe it. That's still crazy, but I totally believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. I do actually have one last question. I can't count.
Okay. That's okay. You'd have 8.
That's a lot.
This is fun.
I'm glad. So one thing that's cool about Heather is that like you're like into your hobbies. The hobbies that you have, you're passionate about, like you share them on social media. There's nothing I care about as much as like you care about some of your hobbies, like gaming, for example, which is a huge part of your life. What are your thoughts on the commodification of hobbies, of gaming, collectibles, comic books, trading cards, all that whole world?
So like, you mean stuff's getting really expensive?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Like you mentioned the game where like the Game Boy game where you have to like fight the vampires outside. Like if I wanted to go buy that on eBay, I'm sure it would be dumb expensive.
Maybe. I mean, I think that the reason Pokemon cards are becoming so expensive is that society is collapsing. And I'm kind of not joking. I think that the people who are spending $1.3 million on Super Mario Brothers 1 are not... It's money laundering. And it's also... It has nothing to do with any kind of actual demand for these items. It has everything to do with people who have unfathomable amounts of money. And this, I think, used to be limited to the fine art industry, which was also like a way in which people could launder money. Like these tax havens were paintings. And as soon as somebody's like, there's only like X number of Charizard cards from Gen 1, so we could spend this much money on this card, which then makes that the value of the card, which also makes it a tax write-off because you have this tangible good that you've purchased as an investment. I think that the ultra rich have hit a wall of what can be purchased. I don't think like there's not another tier of life that they can now have. Like they've got yachts that look like computers. Like they have these giant yachts with a helicopter on them that have like, enough for like 8 families to live on in terms of rooms. They have whatever insane, and this, I'm not a QAnon person, so what I'm about to say is not QAnon related, but they've had whatever sexual experience they want to have. Like that's they've hit that wall. The food, there's, a Michelin star restaurant, that's it. Like there's not a thing above that. Like it's not like, you can maybe hire that chef to be your private chef for the night or for their life. Yeah. But like, that's it. Like there's nothing above that. So now you have this insane density of money and no dopamine hits from spending it. Like there's nothing that's giving you that rush of like, oh, I bought one of 8 Renault 1971 cars that exist. Okay, great. But that limited edition thinking, I own one of 6 copies of this, or like Bill Gates owns one of Da Vinci's codexes, right? Like once you've hit that wall, then it's like, well, what else is rare? I know. Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards are rare. These old video games that are out of print are like the way that you would spend fucking $600 for a Laserdisc collection of a live band's show from the 70s. You know, like it's just like they're looking for anything that has limited presses, and that is the excuse that they use to spend the money on it. And they have so much money that you and I can't comprehend the money. Mm-hmm. So like also $1 million for a Pokemon card for the kind of person who would spend $1 million on a Pokemon card is $0. It only affects everyone underneath. Like,
yes.
And I'm sorry if I'm talking about this for a while. What's weird is that like as a human who has kept all of her video games her whole life, like I wasn't somebody who would like trade them into, they were my treasures. So like I have my games, is that some of the games that I don't really give a shit about are now worth more than $1,000. And one, the game's it isn't good enough. It's not good enough for that. Like that, if you're going to make a game worth $1,000, make it be Secret of Mana or Earthbound or something, you know, like a good game.
Yeah.
But also it makes me feel weird and gross. Like the fact that I ever think about selling my games because they're worth money now, also, it just makes me feel icky. Like it doesn't. So what I'm saying is I fucking hate billionaires until I'm a billionaire, and then I'm going to love it. I'm going to be so good at it.
I don't know if I'm going to be good at it or if I'll get there, but I really want to, even if everybody decides to eat me or send me to the guillotine.
You know what's crazy? And this is a tangent, but you know, it's a podcast. That's what people don't pay for. That's what
this is a zero budget operation.
Yes.
Woo!
I don't understand why billionaires who currently exist aren't, maybe I've said this on my podcast. I'm obsessed with this thought. Why aren't they Rockefellering everything? Why isn't there the Jeff Bezos public school initiative where all, like, in every neighborhood of every city, there is an extraordinary school that is free to go to, where the teachers are paid incredible rates and the rooms are stocked with like every kind of supply, and you walk in and it says Bezos School of Learning, and there's a fucking picture of him, and he's like the great American benefactor. Why aren't there public works of art where it's like the Bezos Park? The dude could put his name on everything. There could be Bezos Rail. There could be Bezos Light Rail, Bezos trams in the cities that like transform the way we live. And he could, by flipping a switch and cutting his worth not even in half, because he has so much money we can't even understand it. He could probably spend 25% of his money, transform the United States, put his name on everything, and everybody would love him. The dude could go on television and like there'd be moms crying into the mic, and they'd be like, you know, my son didn't have an opportunity, and like he got this free education at the Bezos School of K through college. And now he's an entrepreneur. And thank you. And like people crying. And then what the guy wants is clearly power. We would choose to make statues of him.
Yeah.
Like we would then be like, fucking put a giant statue of Bezos in Times Square because like he housed all of the unhoused, which he could do for no amount of his money. Like he could be Alexander the Great in terms of the length of time that his name would be known.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I had never thought about that, but it's like I'm looking into taking golf lessons, and there's a park near me named after someone, and I had seen the name all around the city, but I finally looked it up, and it was just some rich guy who just gave a ton of money to the city of Houston. Yeah. All over Houston. And now the legacy persists. He's I know who he is. And yeah, why isn't Jeff Bezos doing that? I feel
it's baffling
Carnegie,
to me.
Rockefeller,
that's huge,
Vanderbilt, Stanford, all those guys, right?
And also those dudes were terrible people. Like so much worse than Jeff Bezos is. Like as humans, they were oftentimes eugenicists and racists. And I mean, like Henry Ford was a giant anti-Semite. Like they were like such bad people, but they put their fucking name on everything.
Yep. And
gave like 1 million parks. And now it's like, I know nothing about Carnegie except that it would be awesome to do a show in his building.
Yeah, like I'm gonna be at the Carnegie. That's like a jewel in the crown for people, right? Like,
and none of those people had anywhere near the amount of wealth that this guy had. Like in terms of both percentage of actual money that exists and also the actual personal value of that money. I just like I feel like somebody should be like, dude, you could be immortal. Like people would talk about you in the year 4000.
Whoever's left after coronavirus.
Yeah. It's so strange to me that he's not. Like, what is he doing?
Trying on cowboy hats.
It's so weird. Isn't it weird? It's like, it's not just like selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Because he could remain selfish. He could remain, and it doesn't even matter what his motivation would be. Like, even if he was like flagrant about like, I'm going to educate everybody in the United States, like for free.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it because I want people to like me. Like he could say it to camera and it wouldn't fucking matter.
No, because if you're getting the benefits from it, and it's not like trying to get subsidies for like Amazon headquarters or something. It's like literally just giving away money to help people. And again, everybody would love that. That's what everybody wants him to do. And it's just like, I'm going to ride a penis to space.
It would be, it would also be like he could invent a form of brand loyalty that would border on patriotism. Because like, imagine... Like, I went to some fucking shitty school, right? Like, if I had gone to a good school, who knows how much different my life would be? Who knows how much different my parents' life would be if they hadn't had to fucking, like, squeeze money out of rocks in order to get me through 8th grade? You know, like, what would my response to Amazon as a company be if this dude had changed my life? Would I join Amazon for a short period after my education in the same way that some people are like, you know, I want to give back to the United States. Like I feel patriotism, you know, like you would feel endowed by this thing. And maybe he could also just like people would just be like, oh, I love Amazon. I buy everything there, as opposed to the way now you have to be like, I went to my local bookstore and they didn't have the book. And then when I asked if they could order it, it was going to take 3 weeks for them to get it. And I need it by the weekend because I got to read it for a job. So I had to buy it from Amazon. And then I watched a fucking truck come up and I'm like, ugh, I'm part of the problem.
I know. And look at all these Amazon boxes I need to break down and recycle for, I don't know where the recycling goes, but yeah, he could totally do it. I guess Bill and Melinda Gates have done it to a small extent.
Well,
a very small extent.
I've also heard that they are that's all like a wash. That they're investing in their nonprofit so that they don't have to so that money is in a tax shelter. Like I've heard that both sides of that. I've heard yes, they are doing this thing, but also that maybe they're not really doing it.
Yeah. Again,
whereas I think Bezos' ex-wife has become one of the greatest philanthropists of all time very quickly because she's like, fucking,
you
that
can't
would be
take it
such
with
great
you.
revenge. That would be such great revenge if she did all this shit.
Do it. Is this for Jeff Bezos? No, Mackenzie. She's crushing it. I would just love for her to find out that I exist and be like, here you go, just take it. Here's some money. That would be the dream. Not working hard for my wealth. Would have been a great heiress, I think. But such is my lot that I'm making this podcast for free. And I think we covered a lot. Is there anything about gaming or anything else tied to gaming that you want people to think about the next time they turn on their PlayStation, their Xbox, their Nintendo?
I just want to say that we are in the luckiest period in history for video games.
Mm-hmm.
There have never been more games. There have never been, people, myself included, complain about video games because we have the privilege and luxury of doing it. But the truth is that if you, even on not even Steam, like the Switch store, there are 50 fucking games coming out every week that I've never heard of.
Yep.
That are each somebody's dream or somebody's money-making scheme. But a lot of them are like, I want to make a video game and I did it. And then it got put out on it. That's awesome. That's so cool. I don't think that people remember that it would be like, what game came out this month? There'd be more than one game that came out a month, but one
game that you were really excited about.
Yeah. And now I have 2 unopened games on sitting on my table. And that's awesome. I've got them out of the sale bin, but it's
I used to live in the sale bin when my mom was still in charge of the gaming budget. No, it is amazing. And one question I totally forgot to ask: what are you playing right now? What are you excited about right now?
So, because of my podcast, my gaming time is almost exclusively for the podcast. And when we're playing a cool game, that's great. So for the last month, I got to play Yakuza 0, which is a really interesting game. But before that, all of my gaming time was taken up by this awful fucking Contra game. Just the worst game. So I don't have any. The reason these 2 games are still sealed is because every moment that I have to play games, I'm playing them for my podcast, which is we can't do this forever. I mean, it's I think making all 3 of it's giving us mental health. I don't want to sound dour, but we can't keep doing this to ourselves.
Right.
I don't want to work all day and then sit down and play something that is actively making me miserable. You can't live like that.
No.
So that's all I've been playing. I guess if I wasn't, I wish I could play Dark Souls on the PS5. I love that game, and I love that remaster. I got to dabble in it for like 3 minutes, and it was like, oh my God, this is incredibly gorgeous. Okay, now I'm going to play this game where I'm a skateboarding dot from the 7-Up can for 6 fucking hours.
I listened to that episode. That that was wild. That was like, yeah, this is a good idea. We're gonna make this.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd play that. I'd probably play Ratchet and Clank, which I've gotten to play in the sort of like finish a podcast, and then I feel like I have 1 hour before I should be playing the next game, and I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna play something I like. I mean, there's so many mobile games, Apple arcades, and everything is. What a great time to be alive.
Yeah. There's a ton. I even don't have the burden of playing for a podcast. There's games on my shelf that I haven't touched, I mean, in addition to not being a good gamer, I play in like very short sprints, like 30 to 45 minutes max. I'm never going to sit down and play a game all day. Like I'm not built for that. So it takes me a long time to finish games. Took me a long time to finish Red Dead Redemption, The Last of Us. I'll probably finish Ghosts of Tsushima sometime before around the midterms. I bought Death Stranding. Haven't opened that. Oh my God.
That's my favorite game of the last 5-6 years. I love that game so much.
I will let you know when what game I have to delete to install it on my PlayStation 4. How long it takes me to update my PlayStation 4, and then I'll be like, I'm playing.
Great.
I can't wait. But Heather, I've taken up a lot of your time. Shared
thank you. It's super fun.
Yes, you've shared some great insights into cyberpunk. I'm sure you're right. Whatever the haters say, you're right. Into bored rich people buying commodities and ruining things for people. So we've mentioned How Did This Get Played? People should definitely check that out. I really enjoy it. The only episodes I typically skip are episodes where you guys might spoil a plot for an episode or a game I'm very behind on. But where else can people find you on the internet to enjoy your work?
I'm on Twitter at Heather Campbell. I'm on Instagram at Heather Ann Campbell with an E. You can check out my first episodes of Rick and Morty air in the year 2022. And then 2023. I don't know if you guys know this. That show has it's a long lead time on that show. Legendarily long. But that's it. I mean, theaters are shut. You can't see me do comedy. I might never do comedy again. Who knows?
You're not going to get into the virtual world.
I did one virtual comedy show, and it was so exhausting and brutal. You can't, and maybe this has changed because I did it early pandemic. You can't hear anybody laugh. And I know there are outdoor comedy venues that are popping up in Los Angeles. But I don't know. Something about taking a year and a half off of doing it, and my experience on the virtual side being two people doing their best to do a show to silence, to dead silence.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, no, it's oof. And also, like, I'm of the opinion that you have to take the format into consideration when doing the show. You can't do a show about two people in a cafe because, one, the audience who's watching it isn't seeing that. And not in like an improv way where it's like, oh, we can't see the cups, but like literally it's two people staring straight ahead or looking to their right or left, and you don't know where their windows are. Like, you can't, it has to take the form of whatever you can do over Zoom, whether that be a business meeting or like the show I did was about a woman in the International Space Station calling her husband. And so it was like a phone call, and that was the entire show. It was like the 30-minute phone call of these two people who you're watching sort of disconnect from one another. Anyway, so who knows? But that's it. Yeah. Twitter, Instagram.
Yes. How did this get played? Rick and Morty. Have you attempted to do the smeeze?
The what?
Have you seen the Rick and Morty smeeze from Soulja Boy on the internet?
No.
Oh,
What is?
okay.
What is? Is it a game?
It's a dance move. It's a dance trend on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, the social medias.
My TikTok has self-algorithmed so that it is now just people walking down streets in other places. That's all my feed is like soft piano music. Somebody leaves their house and they walk down a street and it's just gorgeous. Or like it's raining, like it's wet. I also get like just somebody goes up to their window and it's raining and it's nice.
I will definitely send it. If I was better prepared, I would have that queued up, but I will definitely send it when we hop off, which will be in just a moment, because this is the end, guys. This is the end of this episode of That Can't Be Right. I forget how I messed it up at the top, but it is exploring structural wrongs, cultural oddities, and wild opinions. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TCBRPod. Like Heather said, check out her work, Rick and Morty, when that episode comes out next year. Hopefully you'll go outside, come home, and then watch it. You won't just be home all day and then watch it. But
don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up.
No, I'm happy to stay in Texas and pay Texas rent until this is over. I am A-okay with that. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day.